And I guess this is something that I would like you to kind of, I guess your definition of it. I mean, we could talk about it now. Like when we ask, if I were to ask you who was the biggest steal of this offseason, are we going free agency? Are we going draft? How are we phrasing this?
I think just both. Like you could do either or. It doesn't have to be both. Just either it could be through the draft or through a free agent signing. Like where's the best value, you think?
Yeah,
so biggest steal of the Detroit Lions offseason. What do you got, Boone?
Mine's a little more out of, and I didn't even think about, honestly, I thought about free agency. And what I ended up going to, honestly, the biggest steal of this offseason, I think it's pretty obvious. What's been the one just downfall of this Detroit Lions team, not just last year, but for like 2022, 2021. And they used a very high draft pick, number 2 overall pick a few years ago on a kid named Jeff Iafrate. And the Lions have been chasing a corner and to have a good secondary for years now. And I think the biggest steal for Brad Holmes in this offseason and just honestly bringing in anyone in the Detroit Lions organization as a whole, I think it has to be Terrion Arnold. Like Terrion Arnold was projected to be a top 15 pick. On most people's draft boards, he was the best secondary player, the best corner, and he was supposed to go at 12. He was supposed to go at 11, at 13, 4. Like he was supposed to go in that range. And he started to drop, and Brad noticed it. And when he gets to 24, Brad goes, I'm going to get this kid. And I think like when you look at it, like knowing that, hey, there's a massive problem in our secondary room, and we need to find a solution to it, and not just like a one-year solution. Like you need to build something up, just like he's built up with this offense with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Penei Sewell, like guys on rookie contracts who you're able to go out there and like you don't have to worry about signing for 4 or 5 years, and you know they're going to be an all-pro player. Terrion Arnold is going to be an all-pro corner at some point in his career for the Lions. And you have him for the next 4 or 5 years on a rookie deal. And he was able to get a number 1 corner at 24 overall, and essentially not having to give up that much to trade up. Like that's your corner. Like I get the Carlton Davis, and Carlton might sign, who knows? But like when Terrion gets going, you just got like Chicago has Jalen Johnson, like the Broncos have Patrick Surtain, the Packers have Jair Alexander. You have your corner now, like your long-term solution. And I think that's the biggest steal. And you were able to get him at 24. Like there was zero chance. If I would have asked anyone in this chat leading up to the NFL draft, if there was any chance that Terrion Arnold even fell past 20, I think every single person would say no. Mm-hmm. And Brad Holmes got him at 24. Like it's unheard of what happened and the way the draft worked out to where you're able to get the best corner. Essentially, I know we had Quinyon Mitchell, Jeff, as our number 1, but it was basically 1A, 1B. And there's nothing else to it. Like Terrion's going to end up being a Pro Bowler, and at some point of his career, he'll be an All-Pro. And hopefully that's within that 4-year spans when you have him on a rookie deal, and you have him cheaper than you would have to go out and pay. What is Jalen Johnson? What was his deal? $15 to $20 million. So you have him more than you have to go pay a guy like that to come in free agency and take that QB that CB1 spot. So I think that's the biggest steal, because it's not just like a steal for this year. Like this is a franchise steal. Like a franchise-changing defensive steal. And then that's kind of how I looked at it.
At first, I was kind of like, like, would you really call that a steal? But then to your point, when you break down the draft and you realize that Terrion Arnold was on the board at 24, when I thought he could have easily been like a top 10 pick to the Raiders, I think some people thought. He could have went to the Colts. He could have went to the Saints. I didn't think there was any way he was making it outside the top 15, let alone the top 20. So when you start breaking that down, I really do love that take, because All-Pro, I think, he's got all the potential, want to see it a little bit, but he is everything to make up being the number 1 corner to go along with a guy like Ennis Rakestraw. So, like, let's say Carlton Davis leaves. I don't think anybody in Detroit wants him to leave after this season, because I think when you give up a 3rd-round pick, you want more than just 1 year. But if he leaves, you're still in good hands.
Mm-hmm. I mean, real quick, too, like if he leaves, we can even talk about another shot. I don't want to take anyone's other one.
No, you're good. Keep going.
If Carlton Davis leaves and Terrion Arnold becomes – and, like, the only reason Carlton Davis would leave and you don't re-sign him is because you know Terrion's going to be CB1. And he's like this year he goes out there and balls out. He does the complete opposite of what Jeff Iafrate did in Detroit. Like he actually goes out there and performs and shows you can do something. And if he does that, you literally have your corner 1, a position that like you just saw the Chiefs have to go through that with L'Jarius Sneed and like just problems where you have to pay this guy. You have him extremely cheap on a rookie deal. And then guess what you have behind him? You have Ennis Rakestraw, who they're playing him outside, and he could step in as CB2. And you have two guys there now on a rookie deal and two elite corners who can be very, very good in the NFL. Brad in his corners this offseason was unbelievable.
So I see me and Klotzy.
Go with you. I got my number 2. Don't you worry.
All right. And I think this is going to be the biggest steal because it is someone that I believe will be playing nickel. I've been saying it for about a month now when we've had the conversation, and looking at what he got in terms of money, I'm gonna go with my guy Amik Robertson. I think he's going to be one of the bigger steals, and I'll tell you why. He's going to start at nickel, and I think Amik in a secondary that was so bad last year, and he's going to help there, obviously. But more than that, Brian Branch moving to safety, he was so good at nickel that you're looking for someone to step up. I think that's going to be Amik Robertson. So I think for me, at least in free agency, I mean, the draft, and we could probably get to that too, because I have one for the draft, and we'll see if Klotz has it too. But at least for free agency, in terms of value, in terms of the player, I think Amik Robertson's severely underrated, and you got away with paying him not a lot of money. So I think Amik Robertson for me is one of the biggest, will be and is one of the biggest steals this offseason for how much he'll mean to this team come the regular season and the postseason. Dude's a competitor, works his ass off. Only corner, at least I know, that I maybe I'm just blinded by Lions that catches balls on the jugs machine. Absolute psycho. So that would be the guy I'll go with, Amik Robertson.
I will say that was I have 2 honorable mentions. Amik was one of my honorable mentions. So I'm glad you said that, because if my second honorable mention doesn't get brought up, I will bring him up.
Okay. Yep. All right. Well, I'm fighting between 2 here, because I think the free agency one definitely would have been Amik. And then I didn't really think about Terrion in the draft, but Booner, like I said, great points. I want to say Vaki, boys. I really do. But if you're saying the ultimate steal, it's the guy I've been hyping up for like the last week. It's Isaiah Williams. Long-term wise, I think when you look at it, that's your Khalif Raymond replacement. I think he's a lock to make the team. I absolutely do. I think even this year, he might not be the most productive guy, but I think he is going to make timely plays for the Detroit Lions. I could see him having like 200 receiving yards, but just when you watch the guy play, yeah, I know it's preseason. I know it's against 2s and 3s, but when he's playing against 2s and 3s, he looks like he's a 1. And when you see that coming from an undrafted rookie out of Illinois who really doesn't throw the ball that much, you don't have that much good quarterback play. Isaiah Williams, guys, I just think is just a wide receiver in the NFL. Not going to be a Pro Bowler, but he's going to be a guy that's going to be a reliable third down target. He's going to catch the ball when it's thrown to him. He's going to run good routes. And as he progresses in this offense, even when Ben Johnson leaves, I think he's just going to be a guy that you watch kind of develop, A, with Hendon Hooker, and B, with Jared Goff. And I think obviously Jared Goff is more important, but he's just going to be a friendly wide receiver for Jared Goff to be around. And that's what Jared Goff needs, a wide receiver that he can trust. Isaiah Williams, not the biggest player, not the fastest player, but he's intelligent and he knows how to make plays. And I think he's going to be doing that for a long time on an undrafted free agent deal. So I think that's when I think of a steal. I think he's the biggest steal. He won't have the most production, but long term, I think he's going to pan out for this team.
Yeah. I mean, undrafted free agent being any level of productive. Yeah. That's an amazing steal. Well, about a quarter of the league, I want to say, is undrafted. Could be. I don't know if that's exact, but there's a good amount of guys that are undrafted.
Yeah, I think there's a handful. There's like a 20-something% or something. Yeah, something like that.
So it definitely can happen.
Hey, I just have one honorable mention. Do you guys have any honorable mention, or do you want me to hit it?
Mine were said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But anybody you can mention. Anyone.
So the last guy I had basically 3 guys. I had my main guy, obviously Terrion Arnold, and then Amik Robertson is honorable mention. Last honorable mention I had, it wasn't a player, so I didn't go with this guy.
I like where you're going with this.
There's one guy I feel like that there was like a massive need. Obviously, there was a secondary, but I'm just thinking on defensively. The biggest thing that was like, hey, this is a problem. And there's been no development. I said it last year that what they needed to do in that defensive line group, like Dan Campbell needed to go in there and Brad Holmes, and they needed to just fire every single defensive lineman besides Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson and say, let's move on and let's go actually get some guys who want to play football in there. Like, let's do that. And shout out Tom Izzo in the chat. Go blue, Tom Izzo, but shout out Tom Izzo. It is not Isaac Ukwu. I wish it was Isaac Ukwu. I'm going to go the coach that coaches the Isaac Ukwu.
Yeah,
I'm going to go Terrell Williams.
Like
Terrell Williams, guys. And I think this is the biggest thing. Like one of the biggest moves that Dan made on his staff this offseason was like, and he's done this for years now, as he's able. You remember the Aubrey Pleasant thing? Shout out Aubrey Pleasant going out there and becoming or being, the head coach last weekend for the Rams. But you just look at like different situations with these head coach, like these positional groups. Dan's has not been afraid to let guys go if they're not working out. And he did that this last year, and he brought in Terrell Williams and said, hey, we need this defensive line to work out. And they let go of the Okwara brothers, and they moved on from a couple other guys, and they ended up staying with Josh Pascal, Levi bringing in DJ Reader. The thing that Terrell Williams, though, this offseason, like, you're seeing a massive jump in Aleem McNeil. Aiden Hutchinson now is going to be a defensive player of the year because he's been working with Terrell Williams. You go over on the other side of the ball, Levi who would have thought that Levi Onwuzurike would have been a guy this offseason where, like, yeah, he's going to be an absolute dog this year. Not me. And it's all, I think, credit to Terrell Williams. Like, Terrell's gone in there and has completely, like, all of these guys that are coming in, Mekhi Wingo, Isaac Ukwu, Mitchell Agude, you would hope James Houston, but like all these guys are learning under Terrell Williams, and their careers are going to just blossom, and they're going to end up being like, you're going to see this defensive line group in the next 2 or 3 years be extremely, extremely good. And it's just going to be because of this guy. Like, he knows he's the best in the NFL. Like, if we're talking about a steal in the NFL or the Detroit Lions, like them getting the best defensive line coach in the entire NFL in that room is like, that has to be like one of the biggest.
I love it. I love that. And I think I see a lot of people chiming in. Austin says, I'm just shocked it isn't Matty Betts. I mean,
one that
no Matty Betts. Hey, Austin, come on now.